guys, welcome back to the Super Dope Book Club. I'm Mary Catherine.
And I'm Sebastian.
And here we are on chapters 7 and 8. So this week's chapters were a lot shorter than the other chapters, and I loved that, honestly. It was very good because we were procrastinating this week. This is hard for us. It's hard to keep up, and I'm really glad we're doing it.
Yeah, sadly enough. I don't know, it's been raining a lot, and
rain makes it hard. Like, that we're recording this 4 days later than we usually do, but we're still going to get it out on time. I'm just saying, appreciate the effort. We worked really hard. Okay, so chapter 7 starts at If We Can't Be Friends. Disagreement is something normal. The Dalai Lama. So I want to start by saying I don't actually agree with Curtis at all in this chapter. I do not catch this vibe. I do not feel the same way. But it starts off, he, for years, just did not like Oprah Winfrey. He couldn't stand her, to the point where he even named one of his dogs after her. And he admitted that was too much, but, like, he literally named his dog after Oprah because he hated her. So at this one function, Gayle King, her best friend, is like, hey, why are you talking shit about Oprah? And he was like, well, I'd love to be Oprah's friend, I continued, but if we can't be friends, could we at least be enemies? Because Oprah wouldn't let him on her show because she didn't like the music he was putting out. She thought that everything he was saying was just, like, wrong. So when he said that, it actually made them interested in him because they could tell there was something there. It was like a strategy, this beef thing. So then he meets Oprah, goes on her show, and then he tells her basically the same thing, and that it's a strategy he uses. He said, I'd always prefer to be friends with someone, but if they're not interested, then I consider being enemies the next best option. Why? Because if you hate me, you're more likely to talk about me. And I get it in his profession and what he's doing. He wants to be talked about, and that makes sense. But for me, I'm like, I don't have the time or the energy to put into an enemy. I don't have any enemies. If someone thinks that they're my enemy, they are putting way too much thought into how much thought I might be putting into them.
Right. But I know that you understand the perspective of it, but, like, I just want to elaborate on it a little bit. Because from the perspective of an entrepreneur, like, you're trying to get your name out there. And somebody as important as Oprah Winfrey, I mean, that says a lot. I mean, she has a lot of followers, a lot of people care about her, so a lot of people are watching her. So, therefore, like, if she says Curtis Jackson in some type of way, like, either way, like, people are just going to go ahead and look him up and just basically somehow, some way, he's going to get a sale, which is nice. Also, I like the perspective of it that at the end of the day, even if he somehow makes friends with her, that's a network connection. And even if he makes her an enemy, somehow, some way, at the end of the road, he'll find a network connection because somebody talked about him or somehow, I don't know, something connected, right?
Yeah, well, and his next line is, we only bring up things we love or things we hate. And the whole point is, yeah, I get it, he wants to be talked about, but for a self-help book, this isn't exactly helpful for me, I guess is all I'm saying. Because, like, I get it, I understand. Especially because, like, most of my passions involve, like, getting my name out there and trying to be a thing. Like, this podcast doesn't work if no one's listening to it, except for we like it.
Yeah,
so
it's not the approach that I would take personally because I don't like it either. But I understand where he's coming from. Works for him, I guess.
Well, and then his next allusion actually makes it make even more sense because he says the ancient Greeks believed in a concept called Agon, which roughly translates to the idea of people coming together for purposes or of a contest or competition. So, to the Greeks, the most basic energy in the world was a battle between two forces. A debate was a fight between two people over an idea. Exercise is a fight between energy and fatigue. Study is a fight between you and the material. And every new day is a fight between light and darkness. So that's how they got into the Olympics. That's how the Olympics were created. But back then, they only gave out gold medals. There was no silver, there was no bronze. And he takes that and says the ancient Greeks' attitude towards competition reminds me of the hip-hop culture today. Since day one, every rapper who picked up the mic has wanted to be acknowledged as the best who ever did it. No rapper is competing for a silver or bronze medal. Some people shy or even run away from challenge, but I always stroll confidently toward it. and that is his personality, that would make him take an enemy instead, because then there's a competition there. He creates this little friction that becomes something bigger. So I get it. I just don't like it.
Yeah, no, everybody has their taste, everybody has their own approach, and this is working for him, which is good for him.
Yeah, no, for real it is. I just,
if it works, don't break it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it just doesn't work for me. So...
I don't know if I even want to use that approach eventually, personally.
Yeah, no, I could never. I could literally never. It makes me uncomfortable. Just the thought of an enemy. I'm just like, I don't want to put thought into other people if it's not positive.
Yeah, sometimes I think I just care too much about what other people think about me, so I'm just like, man, if that person doesn't like me, it's like, damn.
No, that really gets to me. I'm like, I think I'm gosh darn likable. Well, okay, and I'll just go cry in my room. Please don't hate me. That's all. So then he takes that and he puts it into your field. So he says, no matter what you do or what your field, there's someone else great in it too. So instead of believing your own hype, identify that individual and make them your competition. Because that's another thing. People are competing against, like, when we were in high school, say you're competing in sports or something against the people in school and you're the best in the school. And so you're not getting much better until you go play at other games because you have no competition. It's so important to go against someone better than you. And he's bringing it up, especially in the rap game. Some people just be like, I'm the best. Well, you haven't gone up against the best. So, like, you need to prove yourself. So he wants you to, like, single out someone that is doing better than you and put yourself in direct competition with them, which that I agree with. I don't want to be an enemy, but I will be a competitor. Well, like, I will help you push to be better. You will help me to push. Because as you know, I'm a very competitive person. We run a lot, and Sebastian actually, when we run, slows himself down to run with me. And because of that, I hit PRs all the time because when we get towards the end, he speeds up. Or, like, when he sees the time on his phone, because I cannot bear to look at the time. It will really mess up my psychology when I run. If he sees that we're going slower, he'll speed up a little bit, and it'll get me to as well. And, like, when we started, I think I was running a 10:30, and my latest PR was an 8:11 because I was chasing him down the street.
Literally.
So, like, yeah, competing is awesome. And he says, people like to say I'm a hater, but what I am is an appreciator. Competing is not hating, it's actually putting appreciation into action. And I like that because, like, I'm not actually competing with Sebastian. He's a lot better than me, but because he brings himself down and makes himself a competitor, he is someone who is much better than me. So he's the perfect competition for me. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm very lucky that he slows down. Very, very lucky. So he says, if you only compare yourself to inferior opponents, you'll feel like you're doing something when you're really not doing much at all. So if I was running with other people who were also like a 10-minute mile, I would have never made it to 8:11. I don't think I've ever run an 8:11. Definitely in high school when I ran cross country, but we didn't time 1 mile markers. So, like, when I saw that number, you can ask Sebastian. I almost died though. It was so hot. I couldn't breathe anymore. I cried. He was like, it was 8:11, and I was like, no. I was like, I can't. It was take everything. I can't talk. It was really bad. But I did it, and I could have never done it without that push. So our next header is Curtis Lannister, and he brings up sometimes, as in the case of Curtis versus Graduation, which, if any of you don't know about this, 50 Cent and Kanye West actually released their albums on the same day on purpose to create direct conflict. Like, they weren't beefing or anything, they weren't enemies, but they knew that the hype of them coming out on the same day and trying to beat each other in sales would sell even more records. So they put them both out at the same time. And he says, the world will try to choose your opponent for you. When that happens, you need to be hustling at your smartest, because while you should never run from competition, you do have to dictate who your opponent is whenever possible. You can't allow yourself to get into a battle with someone just because that's what the media or fans wants to see. You have to put yourself against the opponent, who not only gives you the best chance of winning, but also leaves you in a more favorable position if you do end up losing. So with Kanye, even if he did lose, he sold so many more records than he would have sold otherwise. And that's an example of even if you lose, you're in a more favorable position. So everyone was trying to put 50 Cent's show Power up against Empire once Empire started on Fox Network. And he hated that because Fox is a free TV show. He's like, your people are paying for my show. It's automatically better. You can't compete with that. And he was like, you know what the best show on TV is right now? Game of Thrones. HBO's Game of Thrones. That's what I want you to put me in competition with. And he doesn't care if like he was actually going to beat Game of Thrones or not. It was a powerhouse of a show. It's the fact that people then are associating the two together. Because if you're associating one of the greatest shows of all time until the last season, then you're with Power, then you're automatically bringing it up a caliber. And he was really smart, so he puts himself into direct conflict with Game of Thrones because someone photoshopped an image of his face on Tyrion Lannister's body. But he was actually the one paying that guy, and he told him to leak it because he wanted to create a viral moment so that Game of Thrones and Power would all of a sudden be in the same conversations to elevate himself. So that was real smart, and I'll give it to him. As much as I hated his first approach, this approach is awesome. However, I have no idea how to do something like that because I am not a viral sensation. I cannot create that without the know-how. He says you can join a losing fight and still come out of it with something valuable. And that's what the value was, getting in the same exact conversation as a show as big as Game of Thrones. So our next header is don't keep your competition afloat. Gianni Versace once said, "It is nice to have valid competition. It pushes you to do better." I agree with that. The problem is, when you're engaged with inconsequential competition, there are no wins for the more established party in that sort of battle. Sometimes the right move is to disengage with competition that's inconsequential. So if like he brought up when he was in beef with Rick Ross, or can't even figure out who the other people were. Oh, Lox. Whoever Lox is, I don't even know them, and that's part of what he's saying. Like, these people try to call out beefs with him, and it's very important for him to learn to try not to respond to these things, because if he doesn't, nobody really listens to them anymore. I've never heard of Lox. I don't know who that is. And if he had starts a beef back with them, they're the ones who are getting more press. They're the ones who are getting all the upside, and he's just angry for no reason making music. So it's really important to take yourself, just like separate your emotions and be like, if I'm going to be in this competition, make sure there is something in it for me. Don't just be in there because you have pride and don't like hearing people talk, you know?
Yeah.
And then next thing in this chapter is to keep a book. In the 1930s, a French tennis player named René Lacoste created the Lacoste brand. He was getting served literally by most of the players he was going up against, and he was doing terribly. And he realized that his best chance for an advantage would be to create a book on his opponents. So every time he went up against an opponent or observed one as a spectator, he would write an entry about the person in his book. Today, his technique of creating a book on opponents is the norm in sports. 50 does that with music. He says, try to identify what constructive things they do every day that has them in that position. Do they come in earlier than you do? What are they doing to beat you? And take note on it. And once you take note, to add that into your repertoire. Do something. So when 50's making a new song, he actually will then he'll listen to songs that he loves, like hooks that he's really into. He'll be like, this is the greatest hook. I want something like this. And he'll put up all these different songs. And when he listens, then he'll go make something. And when he listens to it, he's like, but did it hit me as hard as the first time I heard that hook in this song I really like? And if it didn't, he scraps it, goes back to the drawing board. He doesn't care. Like, he wants to be the best song, obviously, but the most important thing to him is that it hits him as hard as what he likes. What gets him pumped, what gets him excited. If it hits him that hard, then it'll hit everyone that hard, hopefully. So he has no problem throwing away his trash and making something new of it. And he says part of keeping a book is you need to write down all your ideas. Because when you do think of a cool idea, if you put it away and you're like, oh, I'll do that later. Like, then later you've gone and eaten Taco Bell, and then you come home and where's the idea? You're eating a cheesy gordita crunch. Like, you have no idea, and that could have been brilliant. It could have been life-changing. So that's part of keeping your book, is always writing it down. Writing those ideas down protects you against that idea getting lost. Once it's on paper or your computer file, it's there forever, staring you back in the face whenever you look at it. Whether or not you act on it is still up to you, but at least you won't forget it. Once you have it down on paper, you're setting yourself up to make something valuable happen. I lost my sound for a second, but it's okay because we have pause. Oh, fuck me. Okay. Sorry. Do you have anything to say about this?
No, I mean, and not even if I wanted to, because you're gonna transition here to start this.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I could have very easily transitioned after.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Okay.
Just press. And then getting back to those songs that he had no problem just throwing away, that brings us into our next chapter, which I liked much more than the first one, but it's so short. It was like 10 pages, so the nuggets are just tiny. Mm-hmm. It's called Learning from Your L's. Mistakes are a fact of life. It is the response to the error that counts. Nikki Giovanni. Now we get into an anecdote where he's talking about the creator of Honda. The guy who created Honda was uneducated. He worked with his hands his whole life, and he decided to make this new kind of pistons for cars. And he put all his money into it and did everything. And when he went to present them to the company, they were not good. They were just not good. So he had to go educate himself, go back to the drawing board, start over all again, figured out how to make pistons work, right? After the setback. Then he goes to take the pistons. He gets accepted to Toyota, and they make a bunch of them. And then World War II hits, and 2 of his factories get destroyed in American bombing raids. So most people would have given up by then. Instead, he took everything he had and he created the Honda Technical Research Institute. That company, known as Honda for short, would go on to become one of the most profitable car manufacturers of all time. He says, many people dream of success. To me, success can be achieved only through repeated failure and introspection. Honda said, in fact, success represents 1% of your work, which results only from the 99% that is called failure. And where everything he did, like there were so many times where people could have considered it a failure, he just picked himself back up and kept going and did something else and kept driving forward until there was another failure. And every time he just picked himself back up until he created Honda. I mean, everyone knows what a Honda is.
Yeah, I mean, he created something massive. He kind of just created, just kind of like used himself kind of like a video game character, so to speak. Like every time he fell, like, he just picked himself back up, or like every time he was defeated in a fight, he just was like, nah, I'm coming back, trying to level up.
Yeah.
Boom, just kind of knock it out kind of thing. And I love that. I mean, he never gave up at all whatsoever. I mean, perseverance is a hell of a thing.
Yeah, he literally talks about, like, he appreciates failure. He loves failure so much because that's what got him to where he is. Without failing, you'll never, I don't know. You can't just not fail. No one's ever just gone and not failed at something. But many people have failed at something and not gotten back on the horse.
No, I'm pretty sure like most successful people will tell you that they fail more than they succeed at anything. So, I mean, with that being said, it's just like, how comfortable are you with failing at that? That's a real question.
And I got really lucky that what my degree was in college, it's theater performance. And in theater performance, one of the things they're trying to show you right from the get-go is rejection is everywhere. You're gonna fail all the time. I was in school for 5.5 years. By my last semester, I still hadn't been cast in a main play show directed by one of our professors. And at that point, I was starting to lose my confidence a little bit. It had been 5 years, okay? But I had gotten a call back before, and I was like, you know what? I know I'm good at this. I'm just gonna work my butt off on this audition, and I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna blow it out of the park. My last semester of college, I got cast as the lead in a show that was run by my advisor and my favorite professor in college. So I got lucky because I didn't get lucky. I just failed over and over again until I figured out how to succeed. I literally just took all the bad auditions I had done and was like, what could I have improved about this? And I worked until I got it. So, like, I have gotten extremely comfortable with failure. It doesn't mean I don't cry when I do. I mean, I'm going to cry and I'm going to be upset and I'm going to feel it, but just keep going. You can't live in that. You take it, You process the emotion, you let it go. You get back on the horse.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Like this entire past week and a half, myself, I've been going through some failure. MK knows.
It's been a funk.
It's been a funk for me. So like there goes to tell you like so now I have to tell myself, all right. So like now that you've gone through this kind of like bump in your life, like what are you gonna do about it?
And you can look back on it.
Yeah.
You can look back on it and say, what did I do? What was wrong here? What could I have done different? And you can take those and create another better, more successful plan for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's what I'm working on.
And that's all. And that's exactly, you learn from every L, because we're all taking them. It's been a hard week. We've just had a hard week in the house. This rain is not helping.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But at the end of the day, just like I just can't sit back and just sit back and just cry and just kind of just give up. I can't. No.
We don't have the time. we gotta keep going if we're gonna make it.
Afford it. No.
So you just gotta keep going. He says, don't look at failure as something you need to distance yourself from. Try to embrace it instead. Wrap your hands around it and examine it. Believe that you can use it to rebuild your idea and take it to an even higher level than you'd originally conceived. My biggest thrill is when I plan something and it fails. My mind is then filled with ideas on how I can improve it. That was a quote by Honda. He is thrilled. He literally is thrilled by failure because he knows that's what's going to create his next great idea.
I love that, man, because it's hard to love failing.
It is hard to not feel some type of way about yourself when you fail. And failure isn't a reflection of you. It's just a reflection of what you need to do better.
Yeah, and again, I think he really was seeing himself like in a video game, because like the only time that I was like okay with really failing completely was just like in a video game where just like, okay, well, no problem, I'll go ahead and redo it again.
Yeah, like level up, let's go.
No problem. But he was not giving up. He was just like, okay, so I fell here, I learned from that, okay, moving forward. Oh, does that work? No. Oh, let's move them forward.
Ooh, okay, my factories got exploded. I'll figure that out too.
Yeah, like it's kind of like he was solving little puzzles.
And it's even cooler because not all of the puzzles were his direct failures, like the bombing in his factories. Mm-hmm. But it's still considered a failure, and he still had to find a way, even though it had nothing to do with anything he did. He still lost everything, and still had to go and be like, well, my work ethic isn't even what just caused this, but I'm still going to keep going because my work ethic is so great and I do have that vision.
Yeah, because his brain was always working, so his brain was always adapting and just, new things happen, so his brain was just like, okay, no problem, I know how to solve that, like, shoot, we've been through some things.
Yeah, we can do this, I've done some stuff, I failed a few times.
Yeah, right.
So what he says is, the bottom line is that whether you started from shit or were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, you're going to encounter resistance. Every successful person has scars from those encounters. You just can't see most of them. I certainly have those scars. Some of them I'm just starting to share with the world. Instead of worrying about holding that L, focus on learning from that L. Experiencing setbacks, losses, and disappointments will absolutely make you stronger in the long run. And we obviously have told you that is everything. Like, that you can't move forward in this world without losing. So I think that's one of the most important things I've read in this book so far.
Yeah.
Normalizing the loss. Again, here is another step on normalizing your losses: admitting that you're wrong.
First step.
That's the first step. You just gotta admit you're like, oh,
it's crazy because it's so simple. You hear it everywhere.
Just, hey, are you wrong? Yes. What can we do to make this right? Like, what do we got fixed? But most people are like, are you wrong? No, I'm always right. I'm never wrong. Blah, blah, blah. You can't grow. You cannot grow as a person. You cannot do better if you can't first admit that sometimes you're wrong.
Right, because then just you being closed-minded.
Yeah.
No perspective.
And perspective is obviously what we're all about.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely.
So he says the first and most important step in learning from your L's is to identify that you made a mistake in the first place. Let's say you and I go out for a drive. If I make a wrong turn and find myself in some neighborhood I'm not familiar with, I'm going to turn to you and say, yo, my bad. I don't know what I did, but we're lost. Let me plug the address into Google Maps and figure out where we got to go. I'm not embarrassed to say that I've made a wrong turn. I'm not worried that it reveals me as stupid. I've identified that I'm in uncharted area and I want us both to get to our destination. I'm going to do what I need to in order to correct my mistake. He then compares that to a lot of other people who would instead just keep driving, insisting that they knew where they were going and what they were doing, even though they had no idea. There are people that would really drive an hour in the wrong direction before admitting that they messed up and that they need help. And I've seen it firsthand. This is not a sexist thing, guys, but the only time I've ever seen it happen was with guys. Never girls. But also, I don't go anywhere without my GPS because I don't know where I am ever. And even where I live right here. I live in Clearwater, and I have no idea where I am most of the time. It's really bad. I get in trouble a lot. Sebastian's like, you really need to pay attention. I know. I admit that that's just wrong. See, I admit that I am wrong in not knowing where I'm going. However, using that GPS ensures that I will always make it to my destination. I'm always lost. Help.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
Help me.
No, we have a GPS. Just learn.
I'm learning. And that was actually the end.
Yeah, very short chapters.
And actually, we have only one chapter left. And then we have a little bit of acknowledgments, and we're going to go over, like, basically the lessons we've learned from this book.
Yeah, so probably next episode is going to be a short episode.
Yeah, because next week will be our last week of Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter. It is very important for us to tell you our new book. Our new book is called Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. It won the Hugo and Nebula Awards, and it is a novella. It is very short. It's only like 98 pages, 96 pages, but I think only like 90 pages of that is reading material. So we're going to take 2 weeks on this shorter book, and I'm really excited about it because we're venturing into another new genre. This is fantasy. So her name is Binti, and she's the first of the Himba people ever to be offered a place at Umza University, the finest institution of higher learning in the galaxy. Throughout this book, she's going to face adversity, basically racism, wars, and we're going to experience this together. So I just want to show you guys again, Binti by Nnedi Okorafor, and we are only going to read the first book because there's like 3 of them, but this one is the one we're focusing on. So just wanted to let you guys know, get Binti. It is very cheap. This was like $6 maybe. It is very cheap and easy to get a hold of. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening, guys. Have a good week.
Yeah, we love you. Bye.
Bye.